Williams, and today I will be discussing a recommendation for a strategy regarding organizational structure. So, first off, let's talk about organizational structure. We have formal designated tasks. We also have reporting and decision making, as well as effective coordination. So, an organizational structure is defined as a set of formal tasks assigned to individuals and departments. The formal reporting relationships includes lines of authority and those that are responsible for making those decisions. And there's also a number of hierarchical levels, as well as managers, directors, and direct reports. As far as the design systems go, they ensure effective coordination to the employees. So basically, the method that we deliver each task to an employee that they are responsible for completing. So there are different types of decision making that we deal with when dealing with the corporation. And currently with our corporation that we're reviewing, we use a centralized decision making. And what I want to do is cover what we can do to change the centralized decision making process. So with centralized decision making, the authority is concentrated to higher levels of the organization. So the problem with this situation is when we allow authority to make all of the decisions without actually being out at the sites, we're not as effective as we should be. So when decision making sits with top management, subordinates have no opportunity to make decisions, and they most definitely don't have the opportunity in the decision making process. And our issue is that those subordinates are actually working in our manufacturing departments, and they actually have a foresight as to what's going on and what can increase our productivity. So if we allow employees to make decisions regarding specific things, not all things, of course, when it comes to policy, that most definitely needs to stay at a higher command. But when it comes to productivity and things that we can do to increase a productive environment, it's a great idea for us to assess the opinions of our employees. So let's talk a little bit about empowerment. So when we empower our employees, what it does is it gives them a motivational cognitive state that's induced by our organization environment. So rather than being a reflection of a personality trait, it's more so a psychological state in which this individual is going to engage in the accomplishment of his or her tasks. That most definitely will behoove our staff, and it will increase productivity. And it will also allow the staff members to be comfortable with talking to managers and supervisors about things that we can do to change our organization. So let's talk a little bit more about structural empowerment and the effects of structural empowerment. So with structural empowerment, what we can do is we can work together as leaders to review our policies and our procedures and our processes and empower our subordinates to achieve the highest level of excellence within their role. And so what this will do is in turn help us to build rapport with our subordinates. That's something that we lack here with this organization. Now let's talk about some available options. What we first need to do is we need to work on stimulating employees' feedback. So we need to make the effort to ask our staff for their for information concerning work behavior, work performance. And I suggest what we should do is provide suggestion box at each site so that employees can leave anonymous tips, and then as executives, we take those tips, we read them, we review them, and we determine a plan of action. With participative decision making, it suggests that the feedback that we are seeking has a positive impact on work outcomes. And it also creates greater employee self-awareness in our work context, and as well as improved on goal setting and goal attainment. So we're most definitely not going to just take complaints. We most definitely want to focus on feedback that's going to be geared towards production and improving the work environment, as opposed to complaining about specific things that we're not ready to discuss or address at this time. So let's talk about our change in structure. We currently function under a tall structure. So we have our president, our CEO. So the CEO reports to the president, the director reports to the CEO. We have our managers that report to the director, and then we have our supervisors that report to managers, and then the subordinates report to our supervisors. So with this tall structure, we have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And what I found in my experience is that when you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians, it most definitely can affect cost. It can affect our budget, and it also can affect productivity. Because as a president of an organization, you want to make sure that you know from top to bottom what exactly is going on with your organization. And we've got 4 links in the chain of command before information has to be funneled through 4 different departments before it gets directly to the president. So I propose that we work on changing our structure to a flat structure. With this flat structure, we actually have a wide span and we have fewer hierarchy levels. So we have our president, and the directors, managers, and supervisors all are going to be reporting to the president. The CEO can act as an advisor to the president, of course. And then we have our subordinates that are going to continue to report to the supervisors. That way, we limit the number of chiefs that we have in this situation, and then we can increase productivity, and the president can be more aware of what's going on with the organization. So now let's talk about the balanced scorecard. And with the balanced scorecard, it's a performance tool that we can use. Many organizations use annual performance tools to gauge how their staff are working and functioning as a whole. And this performance tool should be organizational and individual. So what we need to do is we need to gather information as to how we're performing as an organization, as well as how each individual, the directors, the CEO, the president, managers, supervisors, and subordinates are all performing individually. And with this tool, what we can do is we can gauge the performance of each staff member. And we can set individuals accountable for operational goals, productivity goals, and then also setting up attainable goals. So if we do have some subordinates that are interested in becoming future supervisors, we can gauge their performance using this balanced scorecard tool. But most importantly, this balanced scorecard tool must initially be based off our mission and our vision. So many organizations forget that the mission and the vision is why we're here today and why we function as a whole. So our goals most definitely need to be aligned with the mission and the vision. So this is how we'll create our balanced scorecard. Is we'll start off with our mission and our vision-based goals, and then we'll focus on our performance, operational, and attainable goals. So now we will talk about financial and budget controls. So for our financial and budget controls, there is a DAND ABC model that's comprised of 5 building blocks. So with those building blocks, we're going to focus on our resource pools, what drives our costs, activities that we have that we're utilizing at each organization or each department, as well as cost objects. So the building blocks are linked together as a role to facilitate our understanding of how our business is structured. So resource pools are going to be our economic elements that are a source of our costs. And in this situation, what we're going to do is, in most cases, we group different budget costs. And we focus on income statements and annual reports, which is beneficial when it does behoove this company. But as a result, if we break it down into these specific budget controls, we can track down resource pools, so non-salary resource pools as far as data, staff cost, and business sustaining cost. For instance, we have our furniture, our consumables, our food, our banking fees, and communication fees. And if we narrow it down to the specifics, we can cut costs and potentially save more money and be budget conscious. So our resource cost drivers are going to be the best single quantitative measure for frequency and intensity of demands placed on our resource pool. So aligning overhead costs to cost objects is not going to be recommended, because what it does is it takes away our ability to make meaningful relative judgments for the production of our costs. But if we can allocate the overhead costs to cost objects, this will prevent us from seeing the real relationship between cost drivers and the costs that are influenced by those cost drivers. So this is my plan. My plan is that we work to change our organizational structure, and we work to get the opinion of our subordinates and see what we can do to incorporate them in our decision-making process. And this will build rapport and increase productivity and allow for continued success with our organization. And then my next slide is to talk about finances and government.